All right, we're going to continue with our next speaker. This is Oliynyk. She's going to tell about the use of new technologies based on the their center. Anna, hello. It's the Center of Liberation Movement. Thank you very much for the invitation to this very important forum. And I'm so glad that at such a high level, we have this discussion of these important issues. Much for the invitation, and I'm going to be talking about our organization's projects, digital projects that have to do not only with Chernobyl, but I believe this exchange of experience is very inspiring for people and organizations that are involved in different issues, because we can actually grasp a lot of ideas for our own projects through such forums. I'm going to briefly tell about ourselves. For many, this acronym says nothing. Well, this is a civil society organization, which is more than 20 years now. So we've had a lot of experience. And we were founded as an organization that would like to study the audiovisual movement in Ukraine in the 20th century, because it was very much stigmatized and there were a lot of myths. So we have expanded a lot of our activities since our founding. So we are now working on the issues of culture, memories, and overcoming the consequences of non-democratic past in the countries of the former USSR. And as the last component, we are also opening access to the KGB archives through the digital discoveries. And that's our mission. Our mission is to make the past accessible. I'm going to tell you a bit about our digital projects only. And we're not only running digital projects, but also others. Maybe there are some of the things that will be interesting for you regarding the new formats that you can include and incorporate for the Chernobyl topic. I'm going to be talking about the electronic archive, also online exhibitions, referential interactive online maps, online courses, workshops, schools and trainings, and also information videos. How do we do it? It seems to me that at the very beginning, it's important to underline that, for instance, we are not experts on producing online courses. We're not programmers. We have an idea and we have the content that we generate ourselves or collect ourselves. And also we have a great database of this content. With an idea on the content, we're looking for partners who are professionals who are experts in either of the areas. For instance, if we want to create a podcast, obviously we're going to be looking for a podcast studio or finding partners that have already been doing this in order to just to avoid becoming real professionals in each and every siloed field. From the standpoint of resource management, that's a smart approach. To engage people from different sectors to be working on your product. Now I'm going to give a little bit more details about the projects that you mentioned, and namely, I'm going to talk about the electronic archive. Because I know Valery Korshunov has been already using some of these resources. And we're happy to see that some of those products that he generated were integrated into the mobile apps or for exhibitions, etc. Because this is, again, what we are trying to convince other people to do, to come over and get something very important and interesting for your project. We have almost 29,000 documents uploaded. You can see the counter here. And what does this platform provide? It is available on mobile devices in high resolution and high quality. We have documents from KGB Archives. We have a lot of them. For the search convenience and for the usability, they are integrated through different categories. For instance, there are 10 very big sections or chapters where you can actually look for the Ukrainian information about the liberation movement, etc., and the KGB documents. You can also filter by topics, and there is also one section called archives. If you're interested to see documents from the archives, you can open it and retrieve those documents and pick the interesting ones for you. But you can also use the search function by the keyword. If you want to find a specific document, for instance, about something. So I selected the 2 sets of documents for Chernobyl. We call them R collections. This is a general collection about the messages regarding the disaster, about what the people said about it. Some of the notices came from about the accidents in Chernobyl before the accident happened, and the first 6 months after the disaster. This is the Kyiv operational responder group information. There are many technical things and procedures about how things happened, how the relief measures were organized, and many of those can be of great interest for you. Also, we have some of the comments collected from the local population about those events. The local people did not have enough information about what had happened. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories about what really happened there. Because the Soviet government decided probably, they said about that they wanted to annihilate the Ukrainian population, that was another operation like the New Holodomor, the Great Famine, or the Great Tragedy. So here you can see quite a well-known graph for you, because it's very often used in different footages. This is the radiation measurement in Kyiv in May. You can see the hikes and spikes. I want to remind you that you can download this in high resolution from your mobile devices, and you can actually integrate the information into your projects. We're going to be so much grateful if you also make a reference to where you get this information from. You see the small synopsis of each and every document. It's just a short description. You can see the authors, the organization that published the document, date, name of the archive, so many pages, etc. Because sometimes we have complaints when people say, no, it's probably fake. There couldn't be a document like this. There could not be one like this. So if you have any doubts about it, we can actually refer you to the archive, and you can yourself check it physically. I also gave another reference to this document. I believe people in this forum can probably say they have never seen this document, or some of them are well known because they're remarkable. This is about the Soviet Union's response to the Chernobyl disaster. So this is one of the documents which is often referred to. That's the list of information, of classified information about the disaster. It was released shortly after the disaster happened, and there are a lot of absurd things. I think there are 8 pages in that document. There are many absurd things, like I said. For instance, They would not allow to disclose documents about the genuine causes, root causes of Unit 4 of the Chernobyl power plant. It wasn't allowed to disclose information about the environmental status of rivers or efficient methods of the radiation illness treatment. Also, there are reports on the Chernobyl disaster, classified reports. This is of a little bit later period. And this is already from 1987. So these are Secret Service reports. And also it's important to keep track of what international experts and organizations said about the disaster. From that Secret Service report, you can find a lot of information, what they managed to actually find in other countries. And how this information was actually submitted to the top government officials. I'm going to tell you a bit about the archive, and then we're going to be talking about the projects. As you can see, for each and every document, we have the detailed descriptions with all the references and metadata. You can actually freely download any document in high resolution, and that is free of charge. Just recently, we have introduced, I think in the last 3 months, we introduced such a feature as the user's basket. For instance, you're interested in something. You came to work with the archive, not with the Chernobyl documents, and you want to pick some of those documents that you're interested in for your projects or for your R&D. You can create your own, so to say, basket, and you can create up to 5 different collections and add whatever documents from the electronic archive you want. Not to work with a whole lot of information every time. You can select, for instance, 5 documents first, put them into the basket, and then as you come back again, you don't have to search them again in those big collections. You can have your own collections to work with later. And like I already mentioned, we have a broad search toolkit, and there are a lot of filters. You can search by keywords. Secondly, you can search by different other criteria and parameters. For instance, you can filter by time, by archive type, by location, etc. So there are so many different filters available that you can use to actually search everything effectively. So please come to see this electronic archive. And this is a very good resource where you can spend a lot of time, because you have a lot of collections of documents. There are a lot of footages. We don't have yet videos, but we have photos. We're working on the English version already. We've been doing this manually now, because this is a very complicated technical system internally, so it takes much more time than if we could actually install the Google Translate plugin. But if you want to recommend to someone who speaks English, the English-speaking people can at least see the headlines and see the names of the documents. The archives are not only about Chernobyl, but I'm not going to be telling about all of them now. We already have this online exhibition. During the pandemic, we tried out this format. So we actually realized that this is one of the things that we have to try out in this given situation. So there is one exhibition which is now open, which is called Repressed Art. We have very interesting documents there about the art during the times of repression and punitive measures, and those excesses. So this is like excessed art. However much fascinated we can be with the documents that we publish in our archives, but actually it's normally read by not a lot of people because documents is about documents, it's about bureaucracy, they're difficult to read, they're difficult to work with. So we're looking for the formats that will make sure it's going to be easier for the people to handle those documents and show interest to them. If there is time, then I can actually show this platform in the browser. For instance, we have here 30 artists. This is this covers different artists from Ukraine, Czech Republic, and Georgia. So it is much easier to use this interactive format instead of looking for articles in journals or other media. Hopefully we're going to have just a couple of minutes to show to you the actual website, because these are just the screenshots. So you can actually go to this link. And here's one picture that I wanted to share with you. Among those materials that we have published, there are external surveillance snapshots, as how KGB tried to look after the artists. There are many pictures like this, but this is just an example of what you can find on our website. Now, about the info videos, this is one of the ways to actually attract people's attention to our documents that we're publishing. And actually, we take the stories from the documents and tell the stories in accessible formats. This is the video that was probably lasts for like 2 minutes, no more. And this video was produced with the support of UFC, I'm sorry. So we actually requested this artwork from one of the studios, and together with them, we produced a lot of content, and they helped us produce this audiovisual story to tell about the aspects of what we publish in our documents. So if we have enough time, then I will put up a video for you. Also, a very good format to concisely tell about this about the scope of our information. It is possible to do this through the interactive map available online. It is called Journey to the East. We have collaborated with WorkUA. They visualize a lot of data, and this is probably the organization that has best professionals in infographics and graphical stories. So we it's called texty.org.ua, I believe. And this way we produced this joint project. We had reference information about each geographical point about exactly where there were the organization of the Ukrainian nationalists, major outlets. So we had a lot of Excel charts. So from those Excel charts, we generated those nice stories put on the map. I'm gonna show to you how the interactive online map works in a browser format, because you can't show it on a snapshot, can you? See that? See my screen right now? These are the main centers where the fighters of the Ukrainian. For instance, you can, where the centers of Ukrainian insurgent army were located. In real time, you could see how this network grew and how they build their links and bonds together. You can see actually where the centers were, where the major centers were, and who was in charge. And on every single spot, you have an attachment like this, where you have referential information and background data about these centers, with pictures from the archives and other things that can be interesting for the users. And there is this bar which you can move over time. It actually works by months. And you therefore can see how the network was growing, how fast it was developing actually over time. I think this is just very interesting from the standpoint of learning something new. And it can be of great use for your users and for your projects. I'm trying to move back to my presentation. There is another tool that we're using. These are online courses about the actually different archives, how to work with them, what kind of document types they are, how to understand the Soviet red tape, how to understand so many acronyms that are so many in those archive documents. Those are KGB archives. So we decided to talk to our partners who develop online courses. And one of the best partners of ours that we've been collaborating with, that was the right choice of ours. This is Edera online platform. So we developed this online course. This is a screenshot from this online course, and there are many additional elements here. These are just lectures, and there are tragic stories out there. There are tests, games, and everything to make sure it is fun to learn more about it and learn more about how to work with those documents. From time to time, we do online workshops and online school classes. Just recently, we had the summer school, and it happened online. It was a big discovery for me. The online school was for the young scholars who are interested in how to work with archives. And for all the 5 days in summer, at the beginning of July, they were sitting on Zoom almost 5 hours every day, and that was a big discovery for me. The students were not even tired of using Zoom for the whole last year. And It means that if you produce very good content, very interesting information, people even are ready to sit in the Zoom for 5 hours in the workshops. Here in the screenshot, you can see another example. We were doing this year a brief series of workshops about how to work with the history documents in the digital era. There were different best practices shared from the Czech Republic, Ukraine, and Georgia, because this is a joint project. And we had a dedicated session to Ukraine, where we had different cases collected together about how and what kind of instruments are used to work with the archived, complicated archived documents and difficult topics. How to work with information that can be traumatic. And there are stories and collective memory things. I know that in your forum, you already had a Gulag CZ. They are our partners in this project of the exast or purged, let's say, art. You can actually play back those workshops on our center's webpage. You can also find them on Facebook, because there's a lot of content here. Also, their experience it is to actually learn more about the Georgian case, because they actively work on game design when they develop their digital projects. For instance, they retrieve buildings of the Secret Service. It's called the People's Committee of Internal Affairs, or People's Commissariat of Internal Affairs of the Soviet Union, which is actually the former KGB. So you can actually come into the room, read on the walls about what had been happening with the people who were put in jails, and this helps actually keep the people's attention a lot, because they learn more about the different ranges and spectra of information. It's a very good thing for inspiration for different organizations that work with some complex issues. And I also wanted to discuss this with our colleagues here, that working with such difficult issue, and when you try to combine them with gamification, you need to be very careful about those ethical things, without letting such games used where users will be able, for instance, to play on the side of not victims, but on the side of the executor. I mean, the hangman. Another project that I would like to actually discuss with you, this is exactly the project in our pipeline. We're still working on it. We work together with the Ukrainian Culture Foundation. So these are the KGB archives. You know that a lot of documents were taken away from Ukraine at the end of 80s, from Ukraine to Russia. But again, very often it is difficult to establish what kind of documents were taken away, were removed from here. But there's one archive, we definitely know it was taken away, and we know the scope, the overall volume. This is this internal militias archive. It used to be an organization, an institution established to fight against the internal enemies of the state. The people that the system deemed to be enemies of the state. And of course, it was the Ukrainian liberation movement in the west of Ukraine. So the Soviet government was fighting against them very severely. So here we are still putting together the information, how it was going on after World War II, how the struggle was taking place. And this is an invaluable source of information for the researchers who study that period of time. They can establish detailed information, data about the people who were killed, and that where no information was available ever before. And also at the beginning of the 90s, when Russia was liberalized, it was a short period of time, we were trying to actually disclose some of the archives, and they were doing that as well, unlike today, from the Soviet Union. There's one Ukrainian scholar, Anatoly Kenty. He went to Moscow with the support from Ukraine. He even managed to get money from the Ukrainian budget in order to copy those archives. And he managed to copy the majority of those archives, unfortunately not all of them, but at least the majority, and bring them back here on microfilms. Those are little tiny films. Those microfilms, they for quite a while were lying with no attention. They were put on the shelf. So that scholar made 3 copies, that researcher. One copy was given to us, to our archive. One copy earlier on had been taken to Canada, and another one was given for storage in one of the central archives. But there was no information available freely on the web, so we decided to do something about it. So we found a scanner that can actually digitalize all those microfilms, and now we have an opportunity to have launched this work, which we have, and to describe everything and put them into different categories, into different, so to say, boxes, and also create this whole set of cases to be published later online. So we're now releasing all this information on our online archive web resource, and we would like to communicate it. This is one of the ways to attract the people's attention to this issue. There are a lot of cultural artifacts, and we believe archives are still cultural artifacts that were removed from Ukraine, had been removed in Ukraine. We need to bring them back. We realize that in today's condition, it's virtually impossible to return those archives back to Ukraine, but still the society needs to know about them, and we need to have them published. Anna, I want to thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Given we have very little time remaining, I would like to thank you so much for what you've been doing, and thanks to your materials today, we can learn more about the truthful historic facts. And thanks to you, we have a lot of information about Chernobyl. We have a question to you, because we have mass media representatives. Can I ask a question from right here? Yes, you can. Excuse me. I just wanted to specify one thing. Regarding Chernobyl, did you have any attempts to somehow, were there any attempts to somehow destroy some of those facts and documents back in the Soviet Union? Or maybe you somehow managed to identify some of the documents which were classified, and for instance, there was an original document which was taken away, removed, and then instead of the original, they produced a fake one and put into the database to conceal some of the facts, you know? Did you ever come across such a situation? From what we know, at least, about Chernobyl, documents were never removed. I mean, the archives still stayed, or at least we have no information about those facts, if they did. Maybe you have heard about the 2 volumes published back in 2019 and 20. It was published by the Ukraine's security service. It's called the KGB Chernobyl dossier. It covers 2 periods of time, before the disaster and after. Those are not only reports, the official ones and unofficial ones, but that included Secret Service reports, referential information, letters from different government agencies as they were exchanged. Those are very thick books. I mean, 2 volumes that our Ukrainian security service published. And this is an incredible source of information. Both volumes are available online freely, so it is absolutely legal to have them downloaded. The National Memory Institute invested money for this publication. I'm not a Chernobyl expert myself, but when I worked with those documents that we have in our archive, and when I was viewing those documents that were published in the Chernobyl dossier, I also have an impression that all the Communist Party leaders and KGB leaders were very much scared because of Chernobyl disaster. They were not even trying to think about archives and documents in those days because they had to somehow respond to the tragedy and fight the panic in the population, not to let the news and rumors spread about the disaster because they were very much concerned about their own reputation in the eyes of their international partners. This is what they focused on primarily. They wanted to do everything possible for no information to leak about any kind of mistakes or any kind of failures at the design and at the construction works of the nuclear power plant, because they were failures made since the very beginning of the NPP's construction. Already in those papers, you can find reports that there had been reported problems about at the stage of commissioning of the NPP, nuclear power plant back in the early 70s. So again, I would recommend you to take a look at those two books. Absolutely, like I said, they're downloadable. You can find a lot of information which used to be classified. Like they would not allow to publish any information about contamination of rivers. They say no information about rivers, please. That's it, full stop. But you know, had they published this information, maybe people would actually behave differently. I believe that this is an interesting thing to read. And could I ask another one, please? No, unfortunately, our time does not permit. On the Chernobyl application, if you download it from Apple Store or Google Store, you can actually find all those classified papers and documents. So you can use those documents freely, because there are some of the very horrible evidence in there regarding the 1st of May in Kiev, how the school children who were walking on the 1st of May parade in the center of the city of Kiev, and the radiation was just huge in the city on that day. You can find a lot of information which will help you dive into that period of time and keep track of how they tried to hide and conceal information, what kind of impact it had. Because information contamination is sometimes much worse than radiation contamination, you know? From those KGB archives, we can understand now the scale of the problem. And tomorrow, we're going to have Andrei Kogut. He will be making a 1-hour presentation about all this. Thank you very much, Anna, for what you've done. And I want to wish you great inspiration and keep going, keep doing this.